Okay, thank you guys so much for joining me to talk about craftivism. Admittedly, I am feeling a little bit of imposter syndrome as I am sharing this with you guys because I am not an expert in this subject. I feel like a dabbler. I feel like I'm doing it based on my instinct and intuition, which is how I do most things. That's how I just move through life, is just very instinctually. So I've had to really do some digging to learn as much as I can about this subject so that I can share it with you guys and hopefully offer some inspiration. The other reason that I feel a little bit of like a little bit anxious about this is because I am like not a natural extrovert. I'm like a super introvert. So as I'm sitting here and I'm telling you, like, use my example to gather people together, I say that knowing full well that will I gather people in person as eagerly as I gather people together in Zoom where we can all be by ourselves with our computers? Probably not. Like, I'm probably not going to be trying to gather as many people together in person, but I will get in front of a screen all day long because at the end of the day, I'm just literally by myself in my room. Um, so like, I just have to acknowledge that. I also think that craftivism lends itself really well to introverted people. Introverted people who may not feel like they can contribute to a movement in sort of the ways that I think people expect folks who are activists to participate in a movement. Like, this is a way of participating and resisting that is very different. Okay, so we'll talk about it today. And I'm really excited to share with you what I have learned. This is going to be kind of like a high level overview of like what craftivism is, along with some examples of like how craftivism has been used. Um, and so here's what I'm going to do tonight. I'm going to explain exactly what craftivism is. I'm going to go over the scholarship and the theory of craftivism. I'm going to share diverse examples of craftivism, talk about who craftivists are, like the type of people that tend towards craftivism, and then share some resources and other brainstorming starting points. And again, these are just starting points, and then we can decide as a group where we go next. This first part, I'm going to talk a lot. If you have questions, feel free to put them into the chat so that I can kind of answer them as I go. And then after I'm done, I will stop the recording and then we can kind of break out into our own discussion here in the Zoom. Okay, so what is craftivism? Um, I want to introduce you to these two individuals here, and I'm going to kind of move myself. I'm not sure exactly how I show up on the screen. So Betsy Greer is the person who coined the term craftivism all the way back in 2003. And then Tal Fitzpatrick is a scholar of craftivism and fiber arts. And so I pull a lot of what is craftivism and how does it work and how does it function within the greater activist space. I pull a lot from these two. So please look at their Instagram handles. Follow them on Instagram, look at their books. I showed their books here on this front page. So Tal Fitzpatrick over here has the Craftivism, a Manifesto and Methodology, and then this book by Betsy Greer here, Craftivism, the Art and Craft of Activism. She's put together this anthology of examples of different craftivists. I cannot go through everything word for word. I can't give you all of the examples of craftivism because there's just so many. And I also can't like get into the theories and functions of activism in general, but I'm hoping that this gives us a really good starting point and sort of tease you up for further investigation and research if you are curious. But again, follow these two on Instagram, tell them I sent you. They probably have no idea who I am, but I have really, really got to know them pretty well and their work. So Betsy Greer's definition of craftivism is a way of looking at life where voicing opinions through creativity makes your voice stronger, your compassion deeper, and your quest for justice more infinite. And so I like this definition. I feel like this is a way to explain using your art and your craft as a way to really focus on yourself and your own personal journey as someone who is advocating for others. Now, this is a really wonderful text. It is from We the Craftivists and Manifesto from Tal Fitzgerald, Tal Fitzgerald's Craftivism book. And so I want to go through it with you guys because I found it very powerful. So I'm going to read it and then we can talk about it. No longer will we be okay with benefiting from the oppression of the other. No more will we tolerate patriarchal colonial systems of oppression, nor toxic masculinity or white supremacy loosely veiled. No more will we remain silent, complicit. We stand against artificial hierarchies and histories of hate. We are the craftivists, a patchwork of makers, diverse but united in kinship. We stand for justice, universally applied. Through our craft, we bear witness. With our skilled hands and compassionate hearts, we mend the tears in the fabric of our society. We make to make connections. We make to raise each other up. We make to make a difference. We make to make change. We resist. I find that so powerful. And again, if you want to have that manifesto and save it, I encourage you to look up Tal Fitzpatrick. She has the full book as a PDF available on her website. So do take a look at that and gain some inspiration from it. Her additional definition of it is right here, and I think that this is also a really beautiful definition, although it is not as poetic. It gets really into the nitty-gritty detail of it. Craftivism is both a strategy for non-violent activism and a mode of DIY citizenship that looks to influence positive social and political change. This uniquely 21st century practice involves the combination of craft techniques with elements of social and/or digital engagement as part of a proactive effort to bring attention to or pragmatically address issues of social, political, and environmental justice. Craftivism can take the form of acts of donation, beautification, notification, or be deployed for its individual capacity building and therapeutic benefits, or for its ability to strengthen social connections and enhance community resilience. So I think all of us, according to this definition, are participating in craftivism as we speak. So we are here, we are strengthening our social connections, we are enhancing our community resilience by gathering together, stitching in community, and talking about sort of difficult conversations. And we aren't even necessarily creating something with any kind of an agenda. We are just creating in tandem with the community building that we're doing. But in addition, according to this explainer of what craftivism is, it is like so many things. So no matter if you are making something to donate, whether that's like an Afghan for a nursing home and doing something for community care, that is an act of craftivism. If you are creating art to be displayed in the public, that it can be craftivism. You can address something that is really important to you that's happening in society that you want to like spread the word about in terms of like notification. So in my example, I have my birth control canvas and and I have a few others, but I think my birth control canvas is like the most obvious for that example. And then also like if you are turning to your art and your craft to nourish yourself and to restore your mental health after you are doing acts in the community for advocacy, for resistance, that itself is craftivism too, because that is the way that you nourish and you sustain. Because in a lot of these situations that we're in, this is not a sprint, this is a marathon, and we're going to need every ounce of self-care and fortitude, intestinal fortitude as we can get. And so if we are drawing strength to continue on from our craft and our art, then that itself is an act of craftivism. There's a lot of ways to use your art in a very powerful way. And so I think I want this to give us all some permission to see it and take inspiration from it, and then plug ourselves in wherever we may find ourselves. So I'm going to go through some historical examples of craftivism that I hope inspire you guys. So this is the Freedom Quilting Bee. And I really loved this example for its civil rights work and also its economic justice work. So the Freedom Quilting Bee was born in the civil rights movement as a way for poor Black crafters. Hang on, I gotta move my thing here. Poor Black craftswomen in the Alabama Black Belt to earn money for their families. Most of the members rallied for voting rights in the Selma to Montgomery March or in Camden, the Wilcox County seat. Despite the passage of civil rights legislation in 1964 and 1965, which was a direct outcome of the Selma March, the region itself remained in turmoil as far as like race relations. This community was approached by a minister, and this minister had the idea to take some of the quilts that he saw out on the um, the line that they were drawing from the laundry line. I don't know what that's called. I can't remember. But anyway, he was driving around in this community and he saw some of these quilts and he found them beautiful as they are. A lot of it is like folk art, the folk art quilting. And he knew that there would be a high demand for this type of textile in another region, specifically New York City. So he arranged for an auction and approached some of these ladies in this community and asked if they would want to participate and therefore economically benefit from an auction, taking these things that were made in this very impoverished area, selling them to people who could really, really afford to spend a lot of money and raise money to help Black women who are fighting for civil rights in the South. So the money went directly to the people, and it actually began the Freedom Quilting Bee, which was a cooperative of women who created this business to make quilts in mass. It started out with just like ones that were made at home, but then they got organized, got together, started producing quilts at scale, and then would sell them in New York City, thereby creating an economic engine for themselves in a time and in a place where they otherwise could not gain that economic freedom and prosperity. So that I thought that was really interesting and really cool, and it still has, I think there's still a landmark there to this day, although I think that the organization has kind of shut down, but I thought this was really, really remarkable. The next example is this one. You guys may be really familiar with it. This is the AIDS Memorial Quilt. This is considered the largest community arts project in history. The AIDS Memorial Quilt helps us remember the unique lives and stories of those we've lost to HIV and AIDS. And this is a 35-year project. It is still going strong 35 years later. Individuals and groups create quilt panels to honor, remember, and celebrate the stories and lives of ones lost to HIV and AIDS. and there are roughly 50,000 panels dedicated to more than 110,000 individuals in this epic 54-ton tapestry. Drivers of change use the quilt as a powerful tool to bring generations together and raise awareness about the impact of this ongoing AIDS epidemic. There's a new initiative now called Change the Pattern, and that is bringing sections of the quilt to communities throughout the South where AIDS disproportionately impacts communities of color. There, the quilt honors Black and Brown lives lost to HIV and AIDS and strives to reimagine the response to the epidemic within the region. So you guys have probably seen this quilt around. I think it's a very powerful, very it's obviously extremely visually striking. It's overwhelming in its size. And I won't say that acts like this are the only thing that create social change in terms of attitude and awareness and action, but they certainly don't hurt, right? And I think they lead to powerful connections being made for people who see this and who witness it, because this is tremendous. Now, this next example that I want to share with you guys is like super powerful and striking. And this is from Chile. These are the Chilean Arpilleras, and I'm sure I'm saying that wrong. But I don't know if I don't know. Can you guys see these with me in the way? Hang on. I'm see if I can move. So these were created during the Pinochet dictatorship between 1973 and 1990. Poor women in and around Santiago began making these tapestries as an income generating project organized by the Roman Catholic Church's Vicaria de la Solidaridad. Church workers donated clothes, paid for the finished projects, and organized them for sale. Many of the women who created these works were members of an association for families of those who were detained by the regime and disappeared. These women stitched scenes from their daily life, children begging in streets, men standing in line for soup, women demonstrating in front of the Supreme Court for news of their loved ones, or simply a family sitting around a table with an empty chair. Also, they displayed police raids on homes, etc. Some of the ones that I have included here I thought were really, really striking and powerful. Their use of color, their use of materials, the applique that they used, but then actually what the images themselves are showing. They're showing people imprisoned, possibly tortured. They're showing the peace dove's head being cut off with a pair of scissors and peace doves injured. They're sharing fires, war, protests. Like, I saw a lot of these and I just couldn't help but just be staggered at what I was seeing. The first of these tapestries were anonymous, but by the 1990s, women started to sign their first names and the date on the back of their work. The church smuggled thousands of these tapestries out of Chile for sale elsewhere. These decorative panels helped to raise awareness of the human rights abuses taking place inside Chile. As criticism of Pinochet increased, the government made it illegal to own or publicly show these tapestries in the country. Okay, so that's pretty heavy. So I want to bring us back to this part of the manifesto, that through our craft we bear witness. With our skilled hands and compassionate hearts, we mend the tears in the fabric of our society. We make to make connections. We make to raise each other up. We make to make a difference. We make to make a change. We resist. So who are craftivists? I think I think anyone can be a craftivist, and I don't even think that you need to necessarily know that that's what you're doing in order to do it. And as long as art has been with humanity and with humankind, we have always used our art and our craft to say something and to express what we're going through. And when we're going through something particularly difficult, it shows in our work. And as I've shared before with you guys, sometimes when I am feeling a certain type of way emotionally, my creativity insists that I create something that speaks to what it is that I'm upset about. Craftivism can be done with individuals or it can be done collectively as a group. Either way, it doesn't really matter. And I also think that it's a way to share something when you're introverted and you otherwise don't want to be out in the public facing way. Like I think you can probably get away with being fairly anonymous and doing some craftivism too. Especially if you are, I think a few of you have shared that you're federal employees, and so I think that there is a need there to be anonymous. And so you may feel like it's necessary to take your activism elsewhere, and this may be a good vehicle for that. I don't know though. I'm not an expert and I'm not telling you what to do. I think everybody has to like know and feel led by their own creativity and their own art and their own desire and drive to make change. So I opened up some submissions on the other day on my Instagram for examples of craftivism, and these were the ones that were sent to me. Someone mentioned the Tiny Pricks project, which is up here on the top left, the Creating a Better World, Diana Waymar. She created the Tiny Pricks project, and what that is taking Donald Trump's words and embroidering them to show just how absurd some of the things he says are. Because once you stitch them and you read them, you're like, wow, that is crazy. So the Tiny Pricks Project, if you haven't heard of that, add it to your list of things that I'm telling you to go look up and find later. Um, Again, here at the next one to the right of that is um a stack of little pins that someone stitched for her friends to wear at the DNC over the summer. And then some other mediums here too. I have this knitwear. I knit that. She's on Instagram and TikTok, and I love her work. This vest, it's just a craft until a man says it's art. I think that's funny. Up here, the to the top right, this quilt. That quilt was submitted as a part of a larger art installation. The theme was red, and the quilt was accepted and totally fine to go on tour with AQS until they read the artist's statement about that work. And that artist's statement about the work was that it was inspired after the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And then it was deemed inappropriate to go into the exhibition. So just because it's a craft or it's a quilt or it's a work of art doesn't mean that it isn't subject to censorship, but it is very powerful nonetheless. And I think pushing back against that type of censorship and reminding people that all art and all craft, quilting, embroidery, knitting, etc., is political, I think that's a good thing. Then we've got one of my designs over here, the uterus. This was stitched by an OBGYN. She put an IUD. She couched an actual IUD onto the top of the uterus and then did a really cool background stitch in the shape of IUDs. I know her work is very difficult at the moment, and she has a lot to say about it. And so she says it all with stitching, and it's really great. And I feel like it's a wonderful collaboration between myself and with her. Um, I think it's great. I love seeing what people do. Saturnalia stitching, I don't care what the founding fathers wanted. Another really great example. I love what Abby does. It's her birthday today, by the way, if you guys follow Saturnalia stitching. Wish her happy birthday. But she has a lot of really great activist quotes and designs. And so someone mentioned this, and I was like, of course, we have to add it. And then over here, circling back to the bottom left, a quilt with a firearm and the words no, quilting no more for gun violence. Okay, so I'm gonna end this with a list, or we can all share some resources here, because I think that craftivism does fit in within a larger context of general activism and participation and resistance, and there are a lot of great resources for that. Dr. Erica Chenoweth is a professor at Harvard, and she just published her syllabus for one of her classes about civil disobedience and civil resistance, as a form of protest and creating change. So she has a book about it. That book is within her syllabus, but if you want like the full syllabus, she has posted it to her Blue Sky. And I've downloaded a copy of it, and I've pulled a lot of these texts also from that book. But in addition, there are these books. Um, there are a lot of people that are doing great things on the internet, like and sharing ways that we can start to resist. Of course, AOC, Bernie Sanders. I saw Stacey Abrams is posting a lot of really great information and resources as well. Um, there's a lot of really great stuff, and we could probably spend the rest of the afternoon or the evening here just like sharing lots and lots of different examples. I do think though that it's important that we pay attention to what's happening without getting mired down in misery. I think being mired down in misery supports the oppressor, because if we're paralyzed, then we literally can't do anything to push back. And we can't afford to do that. So I urge you guys to look into additional resources, look into either craftivist or activism, and find a way to get plugged in and to resist in all the ways that we can. Of course, we can flood our representatives' inboxes and phone calls. We can do a little thing every single day. We can just ignore what certain negative people have to say and proceed on in creating the world that we want to see ourselves. We can make the future we want to see. We can start with being kind to our neighbors, being kind to strangers, remembering that the human tendency is that towards empathy and kindness, and we can start to remind people who may have forgotten that their better natures are that of empathy and kindness. And yeah, we just have to keep going. So if you want, I can make a list and send out a list of some of the resources that I have found. I'm happy to do that. And yeah, just a reminder, someone has put it into the chat, joy is an act of resistance. And we can just keep on going. And I hope that you guys have been inspired to do some craftivism. Perhaps you have gotten a new idea that you hadn't thought of before, seen really wonderful examples of how craftivism has been done in the past in different social and political contexts. And yeah, just keep going.